So one of you guys sent me this video, said that this was an interesting discussion on Naughty Dog, what's going on there. And it's a video simply titled The Lost Studio. I'm intrigued. This is a video from Major Trenton, 19.3K subs. Let's get him to 20. We can do that. Let's check it out, see what he's got to say. And let's see why one of you guys recommended it to me. I believe it was Ethan sent this over. Thank you, Ethan. Dude, Uncharted music is a vibe.
From Jak and Daxter to Uncharted, Naughty Dog has made beloved games for many years. One thing many of these games had in common was the focus on gameplay and action. In many ways, Naughty Dog's philosophy was that they simply wanted to make fun video games. Though Uncharted 1 through 3 began focusing more on story and storytelling, at the end of the day, they were all fun action-adventure games. However, after Uncharted 3, it was the release of The Last of Us in 2013 that cemented Naughty Dog as one of the best studios in the entire industry. This is where Naughty Dog's philosophy began to truly shift. Now, Naughty Dog was no longer satisfied simply making fun adventure games with good dialogue and characters. The Last of Us represented their new philosophy, which was a heavy emphasis on story and storytelling. This then ultimately had an effect for how Naughty Dog would make its next game.
My theory for a lot of this, and this is why I think PlayStation especially is totally freaking screwed for the next like 5 to 10 years. I believe that one of the amazing things about the PS4 generation, including like The Last of Us right before, and then Uncharted 4 in the PS4 generation, Last of Us Part 2 at the end of it. One of their strengths was that gamers were maturing out of the campy arcadey games at the precise moment when they started dropping these more grounded, gritty, serious games. And that's true of not just Naughty Dog's games, but even Santa Monica did that as well. And I think what it was is that there were a lot of people who were young, maybe, you know, kids or teenagers, or even like early 20s, but in that younger demo, when the 360 PS3 era was at its peak, they were kids that became fans of these franchises. And then as those players matured and started looking for more serious subject matter, the studios grew up with them, right? Like the studios developed more serious, more grounded games to meet them where they were at. And so you kind of grew up with the studio. The reason why I think PlayStation is screwed is because they've abandoned my child. They've abandoned the children, which I grant you sounds like something they probably should do anyways. But I feel like there's not much effort from like big companies like PlayStation or Xbox to go after the younger generation. They've just kind of given up on them and like decided, Roblox has them, Fortnite has them. So they're not getting this like built-in fan base of kids that grew up playing God of War, grew up playing Gears of War, grew up playing Halo, grew up playing Jak and Daxter. Like they don't have that anymore. All those kids now are playing Roblox and Fortnite. And I think that's going to cause a serious issue as we get to this next point where those players are supposed to be maturing out of those games into like the next phase of games, because they're totally outside the fence. It's not like they're inside and they're ready for the next step. They're just on a different compound, you know? There's not really any games like that anymore anyways. Well, exactly. That's my point, is that it's major publishers and then it's also the hardware, like first party stuff. They've given up on the younger generation and just given them over to Fortnite and Roblox, and that's going to cause issues. But I do think that is one of the reasons why Naughty Dog kind of developed the way that it did, is that it started with like some kind of campy games, silly games. Even Uncharted, pretty campy and silly, very much a product of its time, Nazi zombies and the like. But as they started to mature and get more serious, fans connected with it and loved it. But it does raise the question, like, where do you go from there? You know, where do you mature out of misery porn that is The Last of Us Part 2? You know, where do you go from there? I don't know.
When making the next Uncharted game, it was obvious that simply making a fun game with good storytelling was no longer enough for Naughty Dog. Uncharted 4 took notes from The Last of Us in many ways. It became the longest Uncharted game they had ever made, while having a larger emphasis on story, cinematics, and technical prowess. You could tell Naughty Dog really focused on its storytelling and characters more than ever in Uncharted 4. This mix of high-quality story and fun action gameplay obviously worked extremely well, with Uncharted 4 being one of the best in the series. But it was after Uncharted 4 that Naughty Dog's philosophy had fully changed to what it is now. They were no longer going to be a gameplay-first studio as they had originally been, or even a story-first studio as they were in Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us. Naughty Dog became focused, well, more like obsessed, on the presentation of their games.
And the misery. So I really liked the original Outlast. The second Outlast, I don't know if you guys played it. It was like one of those games, if the way I described it, it's like they went through the studio. They asked everybody to write down on a Post-it note the most horrible thing they could think of, and then fold it up, put it in the bucket. Then they take the bucket and like, okay, guys, we're now going to design the game. It's all of this. We're not even picking out individual. We're just going to do all of the worst stuff you can think of. Like, oh, you're hiking through, you find a dead child. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do that. Oh, what if there's a pit full of dead babies you have to walk across? Okay, yeah, let's do that. It's just like horrible. It was just horrible. And the same thing happened with The Last of Us Part 2, I feel, where it just got to the point where it was like, okay, yeah, that's bad. And they're like, what if she's pregnant too? Sure, yeah, have her kill the pregnant lady. Why not? That sounds great. What else can we do to make it horrible? Gurgle? Yeah, we'll have her gurgle as she dies. Great. Any other ideas? Like, it just was like, what? It was so miserable. It was so miserable. It's why the other way in my 5-hour breakdown of the game, the other way I described it is that it is an emotionally devastating and draining isn't even the right word for it. It is so emotionally exhausting that by the time you're done with The Last of Us Part 2, even if you loved it, you are just so done. Like, you're so done with it because it's just miserable after miserable after miserable development. Even when you're like, okay, things are going to end well. It's like, nope. Now she runs away and leaves her family behind. And now she's got PTSD. And oops, she was just captured by slave traders. Like, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Like, it's insane. And that's where I'm like genuinely curious. Where do they go? Like, where does this end up for Intergalactic? You know, is it going to be the same tone? Is it going to be the same vibe of just miserable? Or are they going to try to do something else? I'm hoping it's a little more retro, a little more, I don't know about lighthearted, but it's just not misery porn. But I guess we're going to see.
Back, it was not a surprise. The Last of Us on PS3 and Uncharted 4 on PS4 were jaw-dropping on a technical level. So Naughty Dog had been emphasizing graphics and tech more and more as time went on. The Last of Us 2 represented this new focus of theirs. The game itself was still narrative heavy, while the combat was simple, yet still fun and visceral. But when it came to the game's presentation, it was unmatched. It was a technical marvel, and it's clear that's where most of the development time went to. Last of Us 2 pushed the PS4 to its absolute limits with extremely high fidelity graphics while maintaining a smooth frame rate. Then there was the high level of detail. Whether it was the physics on a cable during a puzzle, seamless animations during combat, or environmental detail, it was all flawless. This kind of presentation was nearly unrivaled when it released, and to this day, very few games come close to what Naughty Dog did on a technical level with The Last of Us 2.
Yeah, no ray tracing needed either. No ray tracing needed either. All of that rasterized with like pretty clever lighting tricks and baked lighting and stuff. It's absolutely incredible. But this is just, it goes to show you, this is why I think a lot of gamers are frustrated, is that it feels like they achieved this shot in 2020 on last gen hardware. And it's now been 6 years. We have a pro variant. We have a next generation console. We have ray tracing, path tracing, all this. You're hard pressed to think of a game that looks better as consistently across the board than The Last of Us Part 2. I mean, it really is remarkable. And I'm sure that Intergalactic is also going to be like graphically and in terms of presentation stunning. I'm sure it's going to be incredible, but that's part of the frustration, is that we just haven't gotten that. You know, it's been 6 years and we have not seen, we've seen a trailer, but like no gameplay or anything.
However, this lies the problem. What happens when you're Naughty Dog and you need to maintain or elevate this standard you've set when it comes to presentation?
What is
going to happen?
Make it multiplayer and make it lame. Maybe we do that.
This obsession. What is the cost? The cost is what's happening now and what happened with The Last of Us 2. Part 2 released in 2020 and is the last Naughty Dog game that's released. At the time, the reported budget of the game was $220 million. Let that sink in for a second. A linear 25-hour experience with a couple open areas cost $220 million. With Intergalactic, director Neil Druckmann has said it will be the most expansive and most ambitious game Naughty Dog's ever made.
Yeah, and the leaks suggest it's been designed with a lot of learnings and inspirations taken from Elden Ring. Figure that one out. But my expectation is that it's going to basically be like massive areas where you're just left to run around and explore. Like it's not going to be totally linear like The Last of Us was. It's going to be much, much more open-ended in terms of broad approach, which is going to be interesting. But like right around the time that Elden Ring dropped and Neil Druckmann was being interviewed about like design philosophy, what interests him in the industry right now, he kept doing interviews saying, I'm really interested in environmental storytelling in the likes of Elden Ring and those types of games. Leaks came out around that time suggesting, hey, it looks like the game's really similar to Elden Ring. It's pretty exciting. And the leaks have all been overwhelmingly positive. But it's just like, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be massive. Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear what you're saying, says Detective Toast. I hear what you're saying about parents not buying them consoles, but these children exist. They are a market that's linked to the Apple system. Do you think Apple will do anything with that in the future? Oh, you mean for like mobile games and like Roblox and stuff? They are attached to their phones and those devices. I've said for like a long time that I think Apple is the sleeping giant that if they wake up and decide to try in the gaming space could change the industry forever in a good way, especially under the new CEO, Mark Turnus. I think they actually could see a major shift in a good way. But we'll just have to see. Who knows?
If that linear Last of Us 2 cost as much as it did, what is a larger, more open game like Intergalactic going to cost? A game that's been in development for at least 7 years by the time it releases. Druckmann has already told us it will likely be more expensive than Part 2, but I think that goes without saying.
Yeah.
My point is this. The cost of Naughty Dog's obsession with this tech and industry-leading presentation is a bunch of time and money. And the amount of time it will take Naughty Dog to release one game, other major studios would have released 2 or even 3 titles. At this point, Naughty Dog is not in a great place right now.
But it is important to acknowledge that 4 years or whatever of that time, they were spending on a live service game that was canned. That was dumped. So it is true that they've been working on it for 7 years, but it's most likely that from like 2020 through 2024, the team working on Intergalactic was quite small. Most of the team was working on the live service project, and that when that got canceled, a lot of those people had to figure out what they were going to do now because, you know, things got shifted around. Brody, thank you for that. 5. All my favorite games are PlayStation exclusives. They do it different. Clear beginning, middle, and end is ideal for me. The system's graphics are crazy. Yeah, I mean, when they're actually doing it, when they're not pumping out live service crap that nobody wants. Hopefully they can get back on track. Drayman, thank you for the 10. It's probably been said already, but it's kind of wild how Don Matrick was low-key a visionary for the direction of the industry. I don't say that as a compliment. It is tragic. Yeah, well, I think that he was just foolish enough to think he could get away with it in 2019 while they were on the back foot. What Sony decided to do was wait to make the moves for like digital only and no used copies. They just waited to do that until the market had shifted that way for sake of convenience. And now they're trying to take advantage of that and utilize that to the best extent that they can. Which, I mean, it's probably the best way to do it. If they tried to do it in 2018, there would have been way more blowback. But doing it in 2026, after COVID, you can now say, well, 90% of you already buy digital exclusively. So like, why would we need to throw a fit? That's what they're counting on, you know? But I do agree. This was always what they wanted to do. It was just a matter of how do we get away with it. And Sony thinks now is the time they can get away with it.
Even if you loved The Last of Us 2, the fact is the game was divisive, with millions of fans loving it and millions not liking it.
Yep.
As of a couple years ago, it sold over 10 million units. A huge number, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, the original Last of Us has sold over 18 million copies, with it allegedly being much higher now. For reference, this did not happen with the Uncharted series, which sold more and more with each installment.
To be fair, and this has been a debate for a while, like the performance of sequels in context of like the gaming space. Because for a lot of franchises, you would expect the sequel to do just as well as the first game, but maybe not better, you know? Like Horizon Zero Dawn versus Horizon Forbidden West. That's a franchise I think you could jump into either one and probably be fine. But most people would still expect the first game to have sold better, right? For Uncharted, this is a franchise that's so old. I think the first game was 2007, I want to say. That by the time you go 2007 to, oh my God, do you want to, oh. I just fried my brain. You want to know what I just realized? Drake's Fortune launches in 2007. Uncharted 2, I think, was 2009. Uncharted 3, 2011. Uncharted 4, 2016. In 9 years, they put out 4 Uncharted games. It's been 10 since Uncharted 4. In the time since Uncharted 4, they put out Uncharted 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, poop. Well put. Oh, yeah. And Legacy was in 2017. So you could count that in here as well, because that would be 10 years from 2007 to 2017. So in 10 years, they technically put out 5 games in the time we've been waiting since Uncharted 4. That's crazy, man. That's wild. Yeah, the PSP game, that PSP game was made by Sony Bend. Was it Golden Abyss or something like that? Yeah, Sony Bend, the guys that did Days Gone. That's where they got started, I believe. Absolutely wild. What was I even saying before that? Oh, sequels. Yeah. So obviously each one did better than the previous one. But I think also the benefit of like Uncharted 4 and the secret sauce was that each one of these, it's kind of like a Fast and the Furious movie. You can watch them in any order. You can play them in any order and it'll probably work. You might be like, oh, there, so that's where Chloe's from. Oh, she's from this one and that's okay. I thought she just showed up. But you could play any one of them in any order and have a great time. Last of Us Part 2, I think you kind of need to play the first one. It's a big enough deal that most people have, but I wouldn't expect Last of Us Part 2 to outperform the first game. But it's also just the danger with chasing sequels, you know, is that inevitably you're going to start to see a bit of a trail off.
Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that for many reasons, Part 2 already sold less than its predecessor. Let's combine this with another fact. Their next game, Intergalactic, is a new IP, which can be a tougher sell for gamers, even with a great track record at a game studio.
And in Naughty Dog's case, donated $20 through Super Chat.
Thank you.
My thoughts. Sony didn't kill physical. It stopped chest compressions. We gave up on physical. For everyone that's physical only, there's 10,000 that's never even held a disc.
I'm one that hates that it's happening. Well, first of all, thank you for the 20. That's very generous. As for your specific point, it is true that the market's been shifting this way, but I do think that just because something is niche does not mean that it should be cast aside or like, or put down or abandoned, you know? I really like, what would be an example? The vast majority of watches sold nowadays are digital watches. They're like tech watches. They're Apple watches, Samsung smartwatches, whatever. Vast majority of watches sold today in terms of volume are smartwatches, digital watches. Does that mean we should like abandon the art of watchmaking and like Rolexes and Omegas and Tudors and Patek Philippe's and things? Should we abandon those just because they are a tiny percentage of them, or is that still something worth having? I would argue it's something worth having. Now, is it, if it's more expensive, then maybe that makes sense because it is less common, it's less utilized. You don't get the economies of scale when the vast majority of people are buying a different product or different offering. But I think that there still can be a benefit, even if something is niche, to keeping it around. As for the games industry, and this is where the analogy with the watches falls apart, the specific benefit of doing it within the games industry is that physical media has always acted as basically a protection against overstepping on the part of the publishers and the online stores and stuff, because even if things are bad or even if costs are insane, You still always have secondary copies. You can have secondhand copies bought online or traded with friends. It's always a backup, right? That's completely eliminated with this. There will be no other option, you know? There will be no other option than digital, which I really don't like at all. At all. Especially because once that happens, there's no real going back. I mean, once Sony's got the monopoly on their store, that's it. That's it. You know, full stop.
Problem is this new IP does not look enticing to those that did not like their previous game. Intergalactic does not look like a fun time. It does not look like a good time. It looks like a depressing atmosphere like The Last of Us. Naughty Dog and Druckmann have gone on record stating they knew with Uncharted 4 that they could not just create a game that was dreary and sad like The Last of Us. This was majorly important because they knew the depressing atmosphere was hard to sit through, so making Uncharted or another game with that atmosphere would not make sense and would give fatigue to players. Here we can see that problem playing out. For people who did not like The Last of Us 2, nothing shown here is intriguing. Yeah, the idea of gameplay looks less grounded, but guess what? They showed us a 4-minute trailer showcasing their insane graphics and 2 people talking. They cut the trailer the moment gameplay could have been shown. And
I totally agree with this, and this is why I got a little bit of flack in my initial reaction to it. Because my statement and my stance on it was that I think it's just a bad trailer, okay? The game can be amazing, but a trailer can still be bad. You can have a bad trailer for a really good game or a good movie, and it's just a bad trailer, right? It doesn't tell you anything about it that's like actually helpful. It doesn't set the tone in a way that's like truly intriguing. I watched this trailer and I was like, okay. And that's Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog leaving me underwhelmed with the trailer is shocking. But that's the problem for them is that I think he raises a great point, which is just that quite simply, it feels like it's going to just be more Last of Us misery porn, which a lot of people are just exhausted by at this point. And I hope that's not what it is. But I think what Neil said about Intergalactic, I believe what he described it as was like, what happens when you put your faith in something? Basically, he alluded that it's going to be a game about who you put your faith in, who you put your trust in, and how that affects somebody long term when their beliefs are challenged. I'm guessing it's going to be a total allegory for Israel, and I think it's going to be just a total trudge. At least I'm braced for that. I think it's going to be one of those games where like, oh, here we go. You know, and that's what I'm expecting. I hope I'm wrong, but that's just what I'm prepared for. And I'm not sure if people are really feeling the misery porn 2.0 thing again, you know?
not shown anything in 1.5 years. They chose to release it and show it off this way. So why would I even be the slightest bit interested? This is their current problem. What if, like me, you did not like the story of The Last of Us 2 or found its gameplay did not expand enough from Part 1? What if you're not too interested in Naughty Dog's next title because of that? What if they need to prove to you that you want to play this game? This really seems to be the case for likely millions of old Naughty Dog fans. If they end up selling 4 or 5 million copies, that would mean huge success at any other studio. But at Naughty Dog that's going to spend more than $220 million on this game over 7 years, that means they may not even break even on Intergalactic. Naughty Dog needs everyone to buy this game, especially people like me and other fans who did not like Part 2. But they're so caught up with showcasing a beautiful technical presentation instead of gameplay that they don't realize this. They tailored that announcement trailer to fans who adore The Last of Us 2 and Naughty Dog. Unfortunately, they need to convince everyone else. They cannot make a game that only appeals to the fans who loved Last of Us 2. Otherwise, they are not going to sell enough copies. The problems for Naughty Dog...
Yeah, I will say I've been shocked at how hype levels were crazy high for Last of Us Part 2. It feels like there is almost no... There's intrigue and interest in Intergalactic, but it doesn't feel like there's any hype at all. It doesn't feel like it. At least maybe I'm just in a bubble or outside of the bubble. Like I don't know what it is, but it feels like there's just something about it that's not hooking people. And that's why I think they need to come out swinging with the next trailer and with it. But like they have to acknowledge the problem, which is that first presentation, for whatever reason, didn't impress people, didn't connect with people. on an emotional level or like truly an excitement level. And they got to figure out why that is. If the entire game is just going to be like that, slow, quiet, mumbly talking conversations in dreary environments, like they're going to be in trouble. They gotta come out and wow people and really reset expectations, I think.
Not stop here either, because even if they do sell enough to break even or profit on Intergalactic, they've still lost a lot of money in other ways. Let's discuss Naughty Dog's large issues concerning their development schedules and time management. Since The Last of Us 2 released in 2020, they've had no new game. And no, I'm not counting remakes or remasters. I'm talking about a brand new game. So, why is this the case? Well, let's talk about their canceled Last of Us multiplayer game that should have released, especially since it was so close to being finished. At the time of cancellation, the multiplayer game was 80% complete and was 7 years into development. Considering the alleged scope of the game and how much Part 2 cost, it's safe to say Naughty Dog lost anywhere from $100 to $200 million on this game. And honestly, that might be conservative. Between this canceled game and Intergalactic, Naughty Dog has not released a game this generation and has likely taken a hit of $400 to $500 million between these projects. So, when I say Intergalactic really needs to sell extraordinarily well, this is why. And to this day, it boggles my mind why Naughty Dog did not just press on and release the multiplayer game, especially with it allegedly being great. They could have made some money back here. Instead, they allowed Bungie to sway things internally and allow the game to be cancelled. This shows a lack of confidence on Naughty Dog's part, because they are by far the #1 studio in PlayStation's eyes. So if Naughty
Well, to be fair, so it is true that Naughty Dog, well, PlayStation had Bungie come in and review The Last of Us Online. Bungie came in and offered advice, and they advised on a bunch of stuff that would need to change in order for it to be a successful live service game, which is kind of funny considering where Bungie is today. Naughty Dog reviewed the advice and I think created a game plan for what it would take to deliver on that. I'm guessing realistically what it was is that they had a plan for maybe an annual update or something, or maybe twice a year, and Bungie said, nope, you need 3 to 4 updates a year, and you need this stuff like spliced in, you need new shop updates, you need all this stuff. They outlined it all. And I think for PlayStation or for Naughty Dog, they looked at it and were like, okay, God, can't do single player stuff. The whole team needs to be on this if we're gonna make that work. They went to Sony and basically explained, hey, if we do this, we are not making anything Last of Us, we're not doing Intergalactic, like we're going to be a live service studio forever. And I think that they were not okay with that. And Naughty Dog made it very, very clear, we're going to lose talent if we do this. Like it could implode the studio. Amazingly enough, they acknowledged that shortly around, right in the time frame we're talking about, Jim Ryan leaves PlayStation, seemingly welcomed to retire. I think probably fired, told you're going to be fired if you don't leave. So he left. And in his place is Herman Holst and I forget his name from Japan. They decided to basically just give them what they wanted, which was the ability to focus on what they thought was going to be the most remarkable thing. And now I've spoken to one or two, one person with direct knowledge of The Last of Us Online, and then another person that was like outside but familiar with it. The phrasing has always been the game could have been something really cool, but it still had a ways to go. Like it was not ready. So if people are thinking that it was going to launch within like 6 months, no, it seemed like it was still a ways off and it still needed a good amount of work. And it was going to be a massive risk that if it failed would probably kill Naughty Dog in the process. So I think it was a disaster from the beginning, but it was very much a Jim Ryan decision to like have the best studio crank out a live service game for 4 or 5 years. And then when it didn't materialize, it was like, okay, well, never mind. Oops.
Naughty Dog really wanted to release the game, Bungie's opinion would not have stopped the game from coming out. But it did, which points to problems with the game, or at least Naughty Dog's confidence in it. The schedule issues continue as Intergalactic should have been out by now. Another huge PlayStation first-party game, Wolverine, is releasing in the fall, so it means at a minimum Intergalactic is releasing in 2027. So
because I think God of War La Fey is spring of 27, and that would mean Intergalactic is late 27.
7 years without releasing a new game. Do you know why they keep releasing remasters and remakes of The Last of Us and even Uncharted 4? Because that's how studios help get funding for other new projects. Naughty Dog has not released a game for so long that they've needed to re-release way too many of their old games. And among all these re-releases of The Last of Us 1 and 2 and updates to them, they still have not added multiplayer, something that every fan wants. Okay, fine, your huge multiplayer game got cancelled, but if you were to go back and just recreate the old multiplayer 1-to-1, I'm pretty sure me and most fans would suddenly jump back into it, even if we had to pay a little bit for multiplayer. But Naughty Dog can't even do that. And it goes without saying The Last of Us 3 should have been greenlit and announced by now, or some other game. Instead, other than rumors, all Naughty Dog has is Intergalactic. It's a prime example of a horrible development cycle in time management at Naughty Dog. There is a disconnect between what Naughty Dog wants to deliver and what many people want to receive. I did not want a fully fledged multiplayer Last of Us. I wanted a multiplayer mode in the existing game. Now, fans get neither, not even getting multiplayer in any of the remakes or remasters. Many people, not me, wanted a follow-up to The Last of Us 2 since the story seems to end on a less conclusive note than the first game. But Druckmann and Naughty Dog have said they would not be working on it, and if they did, the game would not be out for a long time. So it's highly likely there would be well over a decade between Part 2 and 3 if a Part 3 was ever made. Again, many fans want one thing, yet Naughty Dog is not delivering that. Druckmann stated that Intergalactic will have the deepest gameplay in Naughty Dog's history, yet they showed a trailer with zero gameplay. A lot of fans did not want a trailer for their new game to show off graphics and story. We wanted to see how the game actually plays and what the game really is. It's been
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem I had with it. Is just watching the trailer, it's really just not clear what the game is. Like we're relying on rumors and leaks to insinuate what it could be. But based on that trailer, it's 4 minutes long. The vast majority of it is talking and shaving her head. And that's kind of it. Like at the very end, you see the jump up with the like sword towards the robot. So, okay, melee combat against robots in a misty forested map. Okay. But that's literally all we have to go on. There's just nothing to go with, you know, like there's nothing more to go with. And this is maybe part of the problem, part of the issue is that there is a huge amount of, I don't know what the right term would be, skepticism, hesitance, I'm not sure. But there's a huge amount of maybe hesitance for Naughty Dog after The Last of Us Part 2. Because one of the things that like Naughty Dog has done historically that I personally don't like, I get why they do it, but I don't like it, is literally deceptive marketing in order to maintain hype or preserve spoiler content. One of the prime examples is, of course, The Last of Us.
Other than
The Last of Us Part 2. And you'll remember in this moment, Joel is shown in the trailer. You think I let you do this on your own? But when you play the actual game,
I think I'd let you do this on your own.
it's Jesse. It's not Joel. Now that is literally a fake cutscene that they made. Now they did that so that players would see Joel in Seattle at the end of this trailer and go, oh, so Joel survives through there, so that they would have their guard down for what happens in the opening bit of the game, right? I understand why they did that, but I don't like it. Okay, I don't like that. I don't like lying to people, you know? And it's not even just like lying, it's that they made a fake cutscene. Okay, like I understand why they did that. I understand, I have no problem with that. I understand why some people would have no problem with it, because especially if it had worked and not leaked, it would have helped that moment hit way harder when you're like, I totally did not expect that to just happen, right? But the previous time that they did it would be like the original Last of Us, where they said multiple times in the marketing campaign, you only play as Joel. You will only play as Joel. This is a Joel story. Ellie helps in like environmental puzzles and stuff, but you only play as Joel. And then what happens? There's a point in the game where it shifts and you play as Ellie. But they said you only play as Joel, so that moment would be more surprising, right? So there's been a history of like lying, for lack of a better term, to preserve a cool moment. But that's why also there's just this hesitance when people see something and they're like, I don't know what to make of it. Like, I don't know if I want to buy into it yet because I've been here before, you know? So there's that. There's also like the feeling of kind of exhaustion from Naughty Dog with the storytelling being really dark and emotionally taxing. So there's hesitance there. But yeah, as I said, I think the game probably ends up being incredible because typically Naughty Dog, based on their track record, put out incredible stuff. I mean, at some point, if you consistently bat and go up to bat and you hit it out of the park every single time, I think it's fair to assume that the next time you go to the plate, you're probably going to hit it out of the park. You know, that's what Naughty Dog has done for years and years and years. But having said that, that can be true while also acknowledging that the trailer was bad and didn't do much to communicate what the game actually is or excite people, which I think it's pretty clear it didn't really excite people.
It's been over 1.5 years from when it was announced, and we still don't have that answer. My conclusion is simple. Naughty Dog is lost. They're going to take at least 7 years to finish developing one game, all because of their technical obsession. Hell, if the PlayStation 6 releases next year, that means they went the whole PS5 generation without releasing one game. That is insane. Now, I am not saying Naughty Dog is going to close down or that there will be mass layoffs, but right now the studio's future is simply uncertain. They're solely relying on an incredibly expensive new IP to help usher them back into the gaming spotlight. If you're a fan who did not like The Last of Us 2, then nothing they've shown you will convince you otherwise. And even if you are a Naughty Dog fan who did like Part 2, that was a long time ago. Developers cycle in and out of studios, so many of the ones who made Part 2 may not even be there anymore. Sure, Naughty Dog used to be one of the best studios in the industry, but right now, they need to prove they still are.
What's crazy is that the reputation they built through the PS4 generation, there are people, like, by the time, this is crazy. Okay, so when Uncharted 4 came out, 2016, say there was like a 5 or 6 year old, okay? They weren't able to play the game, but they watched maybe their parents play Uncharted 4 on the PS4, okay? They were born in like 2010, 2011. So they're like 5, 6 years old when the game comes out. Those people now, by the time Intergalactic comes out, will be like 17 years old. They will be getting ready to graduate high school and head out into the real world and play some new games. But they don't have like an emotional attachment to Naughty Dog as a studio because they saw The Last of Us Part 2 launch when they were 9. Probably didn't play that either. Like the younger generation does not have the same reverence for Naughty Dog that people 5 to 10 years ago had because, you know, they haven't had any games to build a connection with. You know, they haven't built those relationships with the devs or the teams because they just haven't done anything. Now, I would argue that Sony probably is not actually that pissed about Naughty Dog's performance because they got a critically acclaimed HBO show season out of it, and they love that. And they got a lot of remasters and remakes out of it, which was some quick and easy money. I think they're pissed that they wasted all that time in the live service game, but I think they blame that more on Jim Ryan. But I do think there's a chance that Naughty Dog probably ends up launching Intergalactic Heretic Prophet as a cross-generational game. It is a PS5 game that then launches with a quick update, just like The Last of Us did with a quick update to PlayStation 6 when that launches. But I do think that it's a different world than when Naughty Dog was pumping out hit after hit after hit, pumping out The Last of Us, Uncharted, all these games in the same time period. Because earlier when we were looking at that chart of like all of these games, just to be clear, that was Uncharted in 2007. They put out Uncharted, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, The Last of Us, Uncharted 4, and also The Lost Legacy in the time we've been waiting since Uncharted 4. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. That's outrageous. Like in the time since Uncharted 3, The Last of Us, and Uncharted 4, and I think Lost Legacy as well. They put out those games in the same period of time we've been waiting since The Last of Us Part 2. You can't just take off a half decade to a decade and expect people to still be waiting ready on the same level that they were before. Like, things change. They just do.
I want Naughty Dog to prove me wrong with Intergalactic. Show me deep combat and gameplay. Show me a game I need to get my hands on. Because if I'm being honest, I miss the old Naughty Dog. The one who made good games with fun combat and a fun story. The one who made The Last of Us and moved on from it. The ones who release games in reasonable time periods. I miss what they used to represent. I guess I'm just saying, I miss the old Naughty Dog.
I do too, man. I do too. It's absolutely incredible that we've had to wait so long and we just still have seen like nothing from it, but here we are. Like I said, that was from Major Trenton. I've got the link here. I'm going to share it in chats. I want you guys to go show him some love, give him some subs, give him some love and like and that type of thing. Give him some love. I'll just put it there. But I think it's just, I don't know if it's post-COVID. I don't know. There is a trend across the industry. It's not just Naughty Dog, but there's a trend across the industry of wasted dev time and resources. And this is unfortunately just across the industry, very, very prevalent. The only people like that really seem to be unaffected by it are like Eastern studios out of China, out of Korea, out of Japan. They're able to still pump stuff out like it's nothing. Or Eastern Europe, they're able to do stuff pretty consistently as well. But it's pretty clear there is something functionally broken, and I don't know what their solution is. I don't know what their plan is. It just seems like, I don't know. Why do people hate on Neil? There's a few reasons. Neil is very, as far as I'm aware, he's very politically liberal. So people on like the political right don't like him. He's very outspoken and politically on the left will get you there. People that are on the political left, though, don't really like him because he is from Israel, and that's having any sort of like sympathies for Israel gets you in a lot of trouble with the far left at this point. And then you stack on top of that, there's frustrations with how he handled like The Last of Us as a franchise. People blame him specifically for killing off Joel, spoilers, in pursuit of like some desire for like Oscar bait to be taken seriously. And it was like, it wasn't necessarily, but they did that anyways, just for quick drama points and stuff. So there's a number of things that kind of stack up onto this that make people, I don't know, perturbed by him, I guess. He also created Joel. He did. Well, that's the part that people conveniently forget, is that they're like, but I think there was one YouTube video that went, it did pretty well, maybe 500,000 views or something. I don't remember who made it, but there was one video a while back that did pretty well, that basically described how Neil Druckmann actually was not responsible for anything at Naughty Dog. And it was actually Bruce Straley who did all of the work that made like Uncharted and The Last of Us work. Based on what I know about Naughty Dog, most of the video is just nonsense and not accurate. Most of it is just like, Twitter ramblings and assertions that aren't backed up by any evidence. Bruce Straley did help balance out gameplay and the story with Neil Druckmann. That is absolutely true. Bruce Straley did leave, and once he left, Neil was left to do whatever he wanted. He didn't have any sort of checks and balances. That is absolutely true. But Neil did write the scripts. Neil did write the stories. Like, that is true. Did Bruce say, hey, maybe we should try this scene? Maybe we do it this way. And then Neil go, okay. And then he'd rewrite it and rework that. But Neil still wrote it all. People were trying to say that Neil basically didn't do anything and that it was all Bruce. And that since Bruce left after Uncharted 4, that's why Naughty Dog's imploded, which I don't think is fair. Bruce was and is a very good game designer, knows what he's doing. And they clearly worked very well together, but it's not that simple. It's just not that simple. I think what is fair to point out is that it does seem like Neil got very fixated on the HBO show and that a lot of his energy and effort went there, post COVID and everything, and that probably took away from the function and efficiency of the studio. I think that's probably fair. Worst PR now, Todd, Howard, or Neil? I think it depends on the environment. Like if Todd shows up at Summer Games Fest or the Game Awards, he's getting a standing ovation. Like Todd is just that kind of guy. Like he commands the space, you know. Neil, people would be very excited to see him, but I don't think, you know, in 10, 20 years, he puts out some more Game of the Year winners. I think he could get there, but Todd is like a legend of the industry. Neil is like a very respected director and developer, obviously. Dude, the hair is crazy today. I got to get this sheared off. It's like crazy. But yeah. I think probably Todd is still top dog. You know, he's doing good. Doing good. He took my thing.